Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another video, and the reaction to Chelsea being champions of Europe isn't ending anytime soon on this channel. We've got to savour every moment of this, and I wanted to bring a guest back on who I had in the build up to the Champions League final. He was actually out there reporting and working on the Champions League final, watching Chelsea lift their second European Cup. It's Football London's Chelsea reporter, Adam Newson. Adam, welcome back to the channel. We only spoke almost a week ago now. I think it may have been about a week, almost exactly, given the time we're recording now. Previewing the game has happened, the incredible has happened. How are you feeling right now as Chelsea are the kings of Europe?
Incredibly pleased, obviously. Still have a sort of warm glow feeling, to be honest. Yeah, it's been a strange few days. It's not even been that long. It feels like it's been sort of a couple of weeks now. But yeah, it's been a great few days.
So obviously you out there in Porto and experiencing it all. And I remember the last time we spoke, we were talking about fans being back inside the stadium and how important that is. And of course, you're at the FA Cup final. You're at the Leicester game. How would you contrast? I know it's very silly because, of course, you know, the FA Cup final, Chelsea lost. The Champions League final, we won. But I guess just the feeling of fans being in and around, and it wasn't just in the stadium, it was seeing the pictures outside around Porto, obviously fans drinking, you know, getting ready for the game, post-game as well. That experience, and it feels like every single week now, it feels like we're getting closer and closer back to normality in football.
Yeah, it just felt incredibly normal, to be honest. It has felt very abnormal going to games in the last year when around the stadium's completely quiet and eerie, and there's no noise. It's just very functional, basically. Whereas, yeah, you could feel the emotion around Porto. I actually walked from my hotel to the stadium, so that's about half an hour. So I sort of got a taste of what the sort of vibe was in the city, and yeah, it was great. And the fans in the stadium, I mean, and I'm not going to try and oversell this, but maybe it was because of the sort of restrictions in getting out to Porto. It wasn't easy to travel out there. Like, there was a lot of hoops you had to jump through. Maybe it was because of that, but honestly, you wouldn't have known it was a stadium that wasn't full. And credit to the Chelsea fans, because they were absolutely fantastic. And I'm not trying to, you know, slag off Man City fans or anything. And there's probably more, I don't know if it was nerves or tension or whatever for them as their first Champions League final, but yeah, the Chelsea fans were absolutely brilliant throughout, and I don't know if it came across on the TV, but honestly, in the stadium, they were the only sort of set of supporters you could really hear for most of the game.
It was amazing to hear and to see, and especially the way Tuchel was almost conducting the crowd at times. From basically the first few minutes of the game, he was turning around to them. He was really getting into the supporters and really urging them on, especially in those final moments when City were piling on a bit more pressure. It felt very much to me like there's going to be a lot of what worked for Conte at Chelsea for, I think, Tuchel. You know, I feel like obviously he's just won a European Cup, so that's a very easy connection he's going to have forever with Chelsea supporters. But I feel like that's a big thing that Conte had in his first season, and what makes going back to the Bridge next year with all of this with Tuchel so exciting, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I think that Conte first season was really it created such an emotional attachment between himself and the fans. And yeah, I mean, it's a strange one with Tuchel because I didn't necessarily expect him to be like that. Just because, you know, he is such a sort of studious guy. He's a very, you know, he's a football obsessive and everything like that. So I wasn't entirely sure. I mean, and just going back to his Borussia Dortmund days, there was always this thing about he didn't get Borussia Dortmund, he didn't get the fans. So I was interested to see just how much he has connected with people and fans once they've been back in the stadium. And yeah, he loved it on Saturday, and he loved it when the Bridge had 8,000 people in as well. So I think next season a lot of Chelsea fans are going to fall even more for Thomas Tuchel when they're in the ground and sort of see his emotional reactions to things. I mean, his reaction to the Pulisic miss was, I imagine, what pretty much every single Chelsea fan would have done in that situation as well. So yeah, he's brilliant. I think fans will only like him more once they're inside the stadium on a regular basis.
Of course, being inside the stadium when that full-time whistle blew, I mean, I know what my reaction was at home watching it. And it's a reaction I'll never forget, and I'm sure no Chelsea fan will ever forget where they were, what they were doing, how they felt at that moment. Of course, working at the game, watching it unfold right in front of your eyes. That moment, just absolutely extraordinary. I mean, I think one of the you could argue the second biggest moment in Chelsea history, just maybe behind Didier Drogba's penalty kick. What was that moment like, the moment at full-time whistle blew? Because it felt, in a way, slow motion personally for me.
Yeah, obviously I was in the press box, and whenever I'm in the press box, I try and be somewhat impartial as I can be, but on Saturday that kind of went all out the window. Yeah, when the full time, I just felt very emotional. Because of the season we've had. I guess it's been a very up and down season. There has been such extremes to sort of emotions we've had, and I think Liam Twomey wrote his piece as well. I feel this is just the start for this team, and I asked Tuchel that after the game. Actually, I said, how far do you think this group of players can go? Because so many of them are sort of 21, 22 years old. There's such a sort of excitement about this team now, and hopefully this summer's a good one for Chelsea and they can improve in the areas they need to, and I really do feel like this team can go a long way. And I think that was all wrapped up in the emotion of, these guys, people like Mason Mount, Reece James, Tammy, Callum Hudson-Odoi, these guys who've been at the club since they were 6, 7 have probably achieved their biggest ambition already. And hopefully you hope that makes them want it again, and you hope it makes them want the Premier League now because they haven't won that yet. And you just... it was just all those emotions were wrapped up in that moment, and as I say, it was impossible to stay impartial in the press area despite my attempts.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the tactical battle we spoke about previewing the game, and you were pretty confident that Chelsea would turn up for the game, which they did, and talking about maybe Guardiola overthinking it, and I think a lot of us felt, even with that doubt, like he's going to go with his best team, and I guess the analysis post for City is about that big decision that Guardiola made. Does that cost them the final? Do you think in some ways, and I do get this from some Chelsea fans who are saying that analysis of Guardiola, over-analysis on him overthinking, is sort of underplaying Tuchel's brilliance to beat Guardiola 3 times, and really maybe we're going into that decision from Pep a little bit much and putting too much weight onto it?
Yes and no. I mean, I think you can't overstate how intelligent and how well structured Tuchel has got this Chelsea team, and how well his game plan is understood. Chelsea is so well coached now, and that isn't a slight on Frank Lampard. I've said this before. Thomas Tuchel's been doing this for 20 years. Like, Frank Lampard's done it for 3. There's nothing wrong with accepting that Tuchel is a better tactical coach than Lampard at this stage of his career. And I think Guardiola spoke about it. I know there was a video going around on the morning of the game about Guardiola highlighting exactly how Chelsea play, and people were a bit nervous by that. But as I put on Twitter, put Tuchel in that position, he'll do exactly the same thing. Don't bet against it. But I was surprised Guardiola didn't play a sort of a Fernandinho or Rodri, simply because we know how good Chelsea are in transition. We know how good Chelsea are at sort of breaking through lines really, really, really quickly. And when I saw that team, I was just like, I didn't become confident because that would be a stretch, but I thought Pep's set his team up to be hurt by Chelsea, because we know he knows how Chelsea are going to play this. So it was a very strange decision, and I do think it had a big bearing on the game. But as you say, I don't think you can overstate the fact that Tuchel has understate how good Tuchel is and how well he's coached his Chelsea team, because as I said last week, I kind of knew what Chelsea were going to do and they were going to produce. It was just whether or not it was going to be enough, and thankfully it was.
Where does this performance rank in Chelsea history? Like, if you talk about a complete performance, like one of those exceptions, because the chaos of Munich, all right, will always be seen as like the greatest Chelsea performance because we won the European Cup, but like this performance, there was almost a lack of drama to it in a Champions League final. The control we had, and this has been very reminiscent of what we've done throughout our Champions League campaign. But I've had conversations with people going, where does this stack up in terms of not only European performances, but just Chelsea performances in history?
Oh, it's right up there. It was so mature. And again, it's such a young group for that. So, I was impressed by the fact that even though there were setbacks, Thiago Silva going off is a big deal. His experience and he's played in Champions League final before. That could have really rocked Chelsea, but Andreas Christensen comes on and is absolutely flawless. Chelsea, as you say, in that second half, and again, I'm not going to say I was confident, but in that first half, I was writing a piece for post-match, and in the first half, I didn't really get much done because I was sort of watching nervously and not really being able to focus on my work. But in that second half at the start of it, I was like, okay, I kind of know what we're going to get now from this Chelsea team, especially holding on to a lead. They don't often give away chances, and I'll be able to sort of just get some work done very quickly now. And that is, as you say, it's because of the control Chelsea have in games and the maturity that they've sort of played these big games with, enabled me to do that and feel comfortable enough to do that, that I wasn't going to sort of miss something really important. And again, that's down to the structure Tuchel was put in place, but also, the maturity of this group has really shone through. And even in younger players, they've handled big occasions time and time again. Hopefully next season, it's just the sort of run-of-the-mill Premier League games that they can sort out, because if they do that, we know that they can beat the very best and stick to a game plan and see it out.
You could sit here for hours analysing, I think, every single Chelsea player. Because all of them have their own narrative, have their own background, have their own struggles, from Mendy to Kai Havertz. Without sitting here for hours, because I know you're a busy guy, maybe just pick out a couple of individuals, maybe one individual to you that really stood out. Obviously, Kai Havertz scores one of the biggest goals in Chelsea history, so that's naturally. But I mean, it's so difficult because there are just so many players that I think you could just write so much about, could speak so much about, given the weight of this victory.
Yeah, exactly. To a man, every Chelsea player stepped up in that game. And N'Golo Kante was brilliant. You can just run through that team. I mean, watching it live, I thought Reece James was very, very, very good against Raheem Sterling. There was that one moment early on where Sterling got behind him and had that chance. And, Reece is a 21-year-old guy. It would have been understandable if he'd maybe dropped off, 5 yards to give himself a bit more space against Sterling. But no, he sort of stuck to it. He sort of remained bullish. He was into him really tightly, didn't sort of take that knock to his confidence or anything like that. And he really helped keep Sterling quiet. And on the opposite side, I mean, watching it back yesterday morning with the sort of the emotion removed a little bit, I sort of realised more how well Ben Chilwell had done up against Riyad Mahrez. He really didn't give him anything. And obviously the only one sort of time was when Kyle Walker broke forward, and Kyle Walker's so quick. I mean, it is hard to contain someone that quick. But I think the two wing-backs just shutting down those flanks and enforcing Manchester City to come in field where you've got Kante and you had Jorginho and you had Mason dropping in. I mean, it did really stifle Manchester City and sort of force them to play a game that Chelsea wanted them to play. So out of the two, I'm just going to probably say Ben Chilwell and Reece were just phenomenal. But you could say that for every Chelsea player in truth.
Well, one of your post-match pieces was on Ben Chilwell that I put up on screen now, and the link will be in the description box below if people want to go and read it, about sort of Frank Lampard's decision being vindicated to go for Ben Chilwell last summer. He's been one of the best signings because there was criticism of the signing, the amount of money Chelsea were paying when there were, to a lot of people on Twitter, cheaper alternatives out there that Chelsea could have got in. But something you picked out in your piece was that, I think it is a very important thing, is maybe just not on stats. It's the type of character you bring in. It's the type of personality you bring into the dressing room. And apart from his quality on the pitch, I think Ben Chilwell, his character around the dressing room, I think has been felt so massively. And I think that came through on Saturday night. Yeah,
100% agree. And as you said, Frank Lampard stuck to his guns over Chilwell. It has been pretty much understood now that it was a Lampard pushed signing. He was the one who it didn't force Chelsea into it, but was saying, no, this is the guy, have faith in that. And Chelsea spending 50 million on a fullback isn't normal for Chelsea. But it's a credit to Frank Lampard that he could spot a player, not just, he may, Chilwell may not have actually been the standout sort of on the sort of analytics and stats, but as you say, character and the sort of intangibles are really important still. And Lampard obviously felt that Chilwell had that and could bring something to this group. And you look at the way that he celebrated, which, it was what you'd expect, I guess, from any player winning the Champions League, but sort of camaraderie he has with Mason Mount, with Reece James, just with the whole squad. He seems to have fitted into Chelsea almost seamlessly, and you kind of feel like he's just part of the furniture, and maybe even you kind of have a feeling with him he's just like a Mason Mount who's been there for so many years now. You kind of just sort of feel like it that way about Chilwell, which is an incredible achievement for him to have sort of done in less than a year. But I mean, I think he's fantastic. He's adapted to the wing back role so well. He is undoubtedly the best left back at the club if Chelsea go to a back four. I really do think he is going to be Chelsea's left back now for sort of 8-9 seasons. And I do love his character. He seemed that after the sort of Rudiger Kepa thing, him walking out for an open training session and pretending to punch Kurt Zouma was absolutely hilarious. So yeah, big fan of Ben Chilwell.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I think that what he's brought to the dressing room, and those intangible things that I think are so important in the dressing room too, and I think that his positive energy is hopefully, and seemed to have radiated and, sort of seemed to have infected the group in a very positive way. I think that he's someone that you do want around. And I was looking at the goal, the build up to the goal, the passes, Chilwell to Mount to Kai. I mean, I think all three of them, that's a goal that's the winner of Champions League final with 3 players under the age of 25. Which is quite incredible, isn't it? At that stage of a competition, at that bigger stage for 3 players, and it shows you the future. And I guess I want to talk to you about the future a little bit, because since the Champions League final, I think a lot has been made, not only in terms of transfer targets, but what this victory can mean for Chelsea moving forward. I know you brought up the Liam Toomey piece, and it's something that everyone has sort of, I think, touched on, is that in 2012, it sort of felt like the last chance for that great team to get the final piece of sort of the jigsaw, basically, in terms of their success and legacy. Whilst for now, all these struggles in finals and getting over the line, this group having the biggest trophy, the impact it could have. I mean, I'm not going to predict what's going to happen at Chelsea next season, because I think I'd be really stupid to do that. I've fallen into that trap before. We know how chaotic this club is, as has been proven this season. But what do you want to see from Chelsea moving forward? What do you think it can be? Because the problem with this club in recent years has been, when we've won specifically the last 2 Premier League titles, we haven't seen the building blocks on that success to really sustain that success or sustain that challenge at the top level.
I think the first thing Chelsea have to do is not settle in the transfer market, because we've seen them do that before. Obviously, after the Conte season, Chelsea wanted to sign Romelu Lukaku. Everybody knew that. And eventually he went to Manchester United, and Chelsea decided to go for Alvaro Morata. And whether or not that was planned, I have my doubts, and you kind of see the result of that. And, Chelsea's bringing in people like Danny Drinkwater because they hadn't got other targets. I mean, Chelsea can't do that this summer. Firstly, because Tuchel has said he's happy with this squad. And if Chelsea can't bring in any, and this is what he said a month ago, his thoughts may have changed about that now, but he said, if we can't bring in players, then I'm not going to cause a big deal about it, because I really have belief in this squad. And that's really important. And that sort of consistency is important. So if Chelsea do want to sign 2 or 3 players, which, we understand that they do, if they can't get their first choice, they can't settle. They can't just go for the next level down. They just have to accept that and maybe wait for next season. And in terms of what Chelsea should go for next season, and I've actually written this piece for Football London this morning, I want Chelsea to go and win the Club World Cup, solely because having that tag of world champions should mean something. That is a big deal. And it's not a trophy Chelsea have won before. It's pretty much the only major trophy I think Chelsea haven't won. So I really want Chelsea to go out when this competition is played in December and go and win it, because it would mean a huge deal. And I think for the worldwide sort of status Chelsea then have is fantastic. And yeah, I mean, that's my first. I mean, Chelsea will play in the Super Cup as well, but that's, whether or not you treat that as sort of a European version of the Community Shield. I don't know, but yeah, the sort of Club World Cup is something I really want Chelsea to take seriously, because in 2012, I'm not sure if it was seen as that important. It was, and obviously for a lot of the players, they'd already sort of conquered the Champions League, which was their big dream. So, it ended disappointingly. I think Chelsea are the only European team to have competed in it and not won it in the last sort of 12, 13 years. So yeah, that's something I really want Chelsea to go out and do next season is to win the Club World Cup and have the tag of world champions for a year.
It seems like Tuchel, I believe him winning the Champions League means he's naturally got an extension to his contract, which, is just, sounds, just about right. But apparently there's going to be an even bigger maybe contract or an announcement beyond that. Can you give any update about that? Because it seems like he is going to be this contract is going to be announced soon, adding some stability, at least for his next season's sort of future. Beyond that, of course, we never know with Chelsea, but that contract situation obviously is going to be settled pretty soon. Yeah,
winning the Champions League's triggered a sort of another year in his deal, which I think would take him up to 2023. But I think the expectation is that he'll sign a new one anyway. He'll, I'm sure, be paid a bit more money. And I don't know if it's a deal that would necessarily take him 4 or 5 years, because I don't ever see Chelsea handing out another big contract to a manager like that. But yeah, I imagine it's a new deal that gives him a bit more, raises his salary more, which he deserves given what he's achieved. But as you say, and as Tuchel has said, it doesn't really matter about the length of contract Chelsea give him, because he knows as well as everybody else, if it does start to go wrong, Chelsea are never afraid to act. So yeah, there will be a new contract. How much that really changes, I don't actually know. At this point, I don't think it does.
Can you try and summarise this season? I mean, it's just absolutely mental. And of course, it will be defined by Saturday night. Like, that's just the obvious thing, isn't it? We know that winning the European Cup trumps everything. All of the stress of this season, all of the down moments of this season have been wiped away. Or at least you feel like it's part of a big movie in the end. You feel like it was all worth it. I don't think you can get a more Chelsea season than this. I really don't. So if you could try and sum up this mental season, because I think it would be a weird one to sort of reflect on, given the lows, the highs, and then the absolutely monumental high we've just experienced.
I mean, I think you just said it best there, to be honest. It is the most Chelsea of seasons to have started so well and to have the optimism for it to then seemingly collapse in the space of about 6 weeks, which we've seen so many times before, and it always seems to happen around sort of December time. Obviously, yeah, Frank going was tough for a lot of Chelsea fans, and there is still going to be some disappointment that didn't work out, no matter what's happened this season, because so many fans were emotionally invested in that project with Lampard. But yeah, what Tuchel's done in 4 months is absolutely incredible. The way he transformed the season, the way he turned Chelsea into one of the best teams in Europe, seemingly within about 3 or 4 weeks, is a huge testament to his coaching. How can you sum up this season? It's going to be one half in transition, I think, and then the other half, maybe the sort of realization of a lot of potential within this group. And it will be one where people hopefully, and we said earlier, people hopefully look back on this season and go, yeah, that was just the start for this group of players. That was the building blocks were put in over sort of 2019-20, 2020-21, and this is the team that then went on to win X, Y, and Z in the next sort of 5-6 years. And I hope that's how people look back on the season, as not sort of, oh yeah, that was a great moment, that Champions League victory, but that was the moment that then started a sustained period of success for Chelsea once again.
We can only hope. So thank you, Adam, for joining me, and thank you for joining me our conversations in recent weeks to the back end of this season. But I'm sure next season we'll have many conversations about Chelsea, and hopefully, maybe, fingers crossed, a title charge next year. I think that's the big thing for this squad to achieve. Obviously, now the season is complete. We won't have any more Chelsea games till probably July, I think, at this point, when we'll get the first pre-season friendlies. But obviously, you'll be covering Chelsea news. Anything you want to shout out for what you'll be covering, not only in the coming days, but also the coming weeks and months surrounding Chelsea?
Yeah, so obviously the transfer window is gonna be very interesting for Chelsea, as we know. I'm at Adam Newson on Twitter. All my stuff's on Football London, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting summer. There's going to be quite a few outgoings at Chelsea, just because they do need to get a few players off the books who've been there for far too many years at this point. So it'll be an interesting season and interesting summer. And then we'll start preparing for next season, which I sort of was going over it last night, and math isn't my strong point, but I would say I think if Chelsea got to the final of every competition they enter next year, we could be looking at 65 games. So I'm planning on taking a couple of weeks off over the summer, because I actually haven't had any days off since I started covering Chelsea at the beginning of Jan. So I'm going to take a couple of weeks off at some point, and then prepare for what could be another absolutely mammoth season next year.
Absolutely. I mean, the big thing I think is that we'll have fans back in the stadium, so hopefully that will lead to normality, lead to a less feeling of disconnection maybe from watching the games. And as we saw on Saturday night, when you have fans back in the stadium, special things happen. So thank you, Adam, for joining me. All the links to his work will be in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.